Hails, minions and mortals, this is Fang from Lords of the Trident. Recording. The gentleman's sport of getting really stressed, looking at computer screens, yelling, and spending a crap ton of money. What fun. Normally, the plan is to enter a nice recording studio with a giant soundboard and a ton of blinky lights, do 1,000 takes, and send a funnel from your bank account directly into the engineer's retirement fund. But does it have to be this way? Absolutely not. Much like everything else that Words of Fang covers, we're going to take a DIY approach to recording your next magnum opus. If you didn't see the last video on preparing to record, I'd recommend watching that before continuing forward. If you have, then you're likely prepared for the next step in our recording journey, the actual recording. DIY recording your band. Let's lay some digital tape. If you're new to this whole recording thing, then you're gonna need 3 basic things. A computer with a digital audio workstation, or DAW, an analog to digital interface, and at least 2 microphones. Don't worry, we're gonna break down all of this scary terminology. Digital audio workstation, or DAW. Now this is the program that lives in the computer that does the recording. You may have heard of programs like Pro Tools, Sonar, Reaper, Ableton Live, Cubase. All of these are DAWs. The DAW does just about everything. Creates tracks, talks to your audio interface, lets you do mixing, panning, etc. It's like the digital version of that big giant soundboard in the recording studio. Much like most professional photo editors use Adobe Photoshop, most professional sound engineers use Avid Pro Tools. The only problem is that a legit license can cost you $500 plus. A cheaper alternative is Reaper, a fully featured but budget-conscious DAW. A legit license only costs 60 bucks, and Reaper gives you a very, let's say, liberal amount of trial time. For me personally, I use Pro Tools because our producer and mixer does as well, and that's the easiest way for me to make edits for him and send him files. I have a ton of musician friends who swear by Reaper, and actually it's what we use to record our live bootlegs in our earbox. So if you're working by yourself, I'd recommend using that. Analog to digital interface. This is a box that takes an analog signal, i.e. your microphone cable or your guitar plug, and converts it to a digital stream of ones and zeros that the computer can read. It basically takes the sound picked up by the microphone or by the cable and sends it to the computer, usually via USB. Many of these interfaces also have preamps, which is a way to increase the signal strength of a microphone, which of course is essential to being able to hear anything at all. Why? Well, a very small amount of signal comes out of a microphone, and then it's pumped up by the preamp before it's sent to the computer. Now, there are a ton of interfaces out there, ranging from $100 to $10,000. You'll want to do your research and pick the interface that fits your needs. Personally, I've always loved Mark of the Unicorn interfaces and the Sapphire Focusrite interfaces. If you're getting started, you know, the 2i2, 2i4 is budget conscious and it's really nice. I've got the 18920. All of Frostburn was recorded using a Motu 8 pre, and all of Shadows from the Past was recorded on the Sapphire Focusrite 18920. Both interfaces cost around 500 bucks, and you can get much cheaper versions, like I was saying, the 2i2, the 2i4, for like $200 or $300. Microphones! You know what these are, right? I mean, I hope so. Microphones come in all shapes, sizes, and colors, and can range in price from 20 bucks to like 10 grand. To record guitars, there's nothing quite like the Shure SM57, and as a bonus, you can use it as a hammer after you're done. For vocals, acoustic guitar, etc., you'll probably want something more in the large diaphragm category, or microphones that look big category, like the Audio-Technica 3035, 2020, etc. The Neumann TLM-103 is actually what I'm talking into right now, and it's my favorite microphone in my arsenal, or the Blue Baby Bottle. Rule of thumb, don't pay less than 70 bucks for a new microphone, and if you plan on doing a lot of recording, the more mics you have, the more sonic combinations you can try, the bigger your palette, basically. Alright, enough of the introductions. If you've never tried recording before, you may want to play with your DAW a little bit and see if you can make a scratch track that sounds halfway decent. However, if you're already comfortable with these concepts, you're looking for some real-life tips from your old buddy Fang, so your wish is my command. Here are Fang's DIY recording tips. First off, all of these tips assume that you're going to be recording the tracks yourself, but having someone else mix the tracks you create. All of these tips do still apply if you're mixing yourself, but I think it's important to have a second and sometimes third set of ears on your material during mixing. You already know the songs, how they flow, and what you think they should sound like. Having a second opinion could unlock new potential in your song structure or in the tone of your piece. My first recommendation, use the money you're saving by DIY recording to hire a really good mixing and mastering agent. Okay, but actual tips. Tip number one, garbage in, garbage out. This is the first, best, and overarching tip of them all. If your tone sounds crappy, if your guitar is out of tune, if you've got a cold, if your drummer can't keep time because the click is too soft, if you're recording garbage, you will end up with garbage. You can polish a turd a lot, but at the end of the day, it's still a turd. You're recording yourself, so you're not beholden to any sort of studio schedule. If something doesn't sound right, fix it. If you can't perform the part that day, rest and try again. When all of this is over, you should have an unmixed song that still sounds pretty damn good, not a piece of crap that you hope the mixing agent will be able to fix for you. Tip number two, record with a large sonic palette. Okay, earlier in the video, I said you'd need at least 2 microphones to record guitars. Why? Before you set out to record your guitars, your guitarist has picked out his recording tone. He's cut some mids, boosted some bass, trimmed the highs, etc. Now, you want to give your engineer 100% of that juicy tone. If you only have one microphone that does one frequency well, you're gonna miss some of the fullness of that tone. You know, maybe at the end of the day, your engineer will cut out all the low frequencies. Maybe he'll boost the mids, but that's his decision to make, not yours. So don't handicap him by giving him a mix that's missing a large chunk of the frequency range. This would be equivalent to like shooting your own wedding video and then hiring an editor and color corrector. If you shot the video yourself but it was super dark, there's only so much the editor can do to brighten it up before it starts to look crappy. Now, if you gave him a well-balanced video to begin with, he could make things look a lot better. So give your producer slash editor slash mixer more than enough leeway to do whatever they want with the track, and you'll be far better off. Tip number three, make edits easier by recording a DI. A DI box, or a direct input box, takes the dry guitar signal and converts it into an XLR, microphone cable, signal, which can be captured by your interface. If you have at least 3 inputs on your interface box, you should be capturing a dry guitar signal along with the 2 microphones on your amp. But Fang, this sounds crappy. Like, why would I ever want that dry, like, plunk plunk sound on the track, man? See, that's just the thing. You don't. You're gonna turn down the playback of your DI signal so no one ever hears it. So why would you need it? Well, 2 reasons. Number 1, editing. Let's say you've got some like super fast, super aggressive tremolo picking tracks that are not quite lining up. You've got one on the left and one on the right. So if you look at the signal coming from the microphones, it looks like a big squashed mess. Take a look at the bottom track here and see if you can tell where the note attack starts. Now, look at this top track. The top is the DI, the bottom is the microphone. Same notes, same timing, except one is amped and one is dry. Although we don't use the sound of the DI track, we can use the actual track itself to figure out where the pick attack starts and stops. This allows us to easily time adjust guitars that would be otherwise impossible. Number 2, reamping. So perhaps you go through all the work to capture your wicked guitar tone, but after you add in all the other instruments, it just doesn't have that same bite as before, and there's nothing really else that the engineer can do to the track that you recorded. Well, not to worry, because if you recorded a DI track, you can send that track to a reamping box and then plug it into a different guitar amp of your choice. You can then play the track from the tape while messing around with the tone, microphones, etc. in real time and re-record the track on this different amp without ever touching a guitar. We actually ended up doing this on our song Figaro when we realized that we had accidentally left the boost off of our 5150 amp and the tone sounded way different. Tip number 4, want big guitars? 2 tracks, panned left and right. Everybody wants those huge, massive, angry at your dad guitar sounds that the big boys get, right? So here's how you do it. Record 2 takes of the same guitar track and pan them hard left and hard right. Although the tracks may sound like they're perfectly aligned, I mean if your guitarist played them correctly, the very small changes in attack and decay of each track will expand the sonic field and give you this massive sound. This is why you have to perform 2 takes of the track instead of copying and pasting one take to the other. If you don't believe me, give it a try yourself. Tip number 5. The guy who wrote it, or the better player, plays both tracks. Let's say you've got 2 guitar players in your band. Since you're recording 2 takes of the same track, one left and one right, you'd think that one guitarist should play the one track and the other one should play the other, right? Well, you can do this, but I don't think you should. Remember, you're trying to perfectly match the timing of the right track with the left track and vice versa. Usually, it's easier to match your own playing or singing than somebody else's. If you're the guitarist who wrote the track, you should probably be the one to play the parts. This is not about ego or who played what or whatever. It's about saving time and money. There are plenty of big-name bands out there where only one guitarist plays all of the rhythm tracks. Tip number 6. A little quantizing is better than an hour of recording. Look, I'm just going to come out and say this. Quantizing, time adjusting, time shifting, whatever you want to call it, everybody does it. Even if your guitarist is nicknamed the Human Metronome, and your drummer is nicknamed the Atomic Clock, and your bassist is relatively on-time Jimmy, there are going to be some situations where the tracks are just not locking into the tempo. We are human. We can't produce perfect tempo 100% of the time. Taking 5 minutes to quantize the track is going to be a better use of your time than spending an hour trying to get it just right. Take my word for it. On our second album, Chains on Fire, we didn't use any quantization. Some tracks had upwards of 140 takes. It was grueling. The next 2 albums used quantization, and everybody was much happier, except for me, because I did all of the time shifting work. Tip number 7. The click is God. All hail the click. The click is everything. Your alpha, your omega, all of your answers. Do not question the click. The click knows and sees all. If you want a good sounding album, you must record with a click. If you're one of those progressive gent weirdo bands that do all sorts of like different tempos and time signatures, you need to make a tempo map. End of story. Recording without a click is doomed to failure. Your album will be bad, and I will point at you and tell you that I told you so. Recording isn't as scary as everyone makes it out to be. It's a lot of work, and sometimes it sucks, but anybody can do it. Use these collective tips, and hopefully your recording experience will be a little easier. Oh, and make sure to thank your buddy Fang in the credits. And if you owe your magnum opus to our help, or maybe you just want to get some extra content, music, and perks, sign up for the most metal army on the internet, the Lords of the Trident Patreon at patreon.com/Lords of the Trident. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.